Good afternoon. I know that some people are still coming in the entrance at the back, but I think in the interests of time, I think we'll begin. My name is Mary Ellen Purkis, and I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Human and Social Development here at the University of Victoria, and it is my very great pleasure to welcome all of you, delegates, community members, faculty, students, to our university and to this particular Big Thinking event. It is a personal honor to have Mary Ellen Turpel Lafond here to speak with us today. In just a moment, she will be introduced to you more fully, but I just need to say that it is rare indeed to be able to share the stage with another Mary Ellen. There are just not that many of us around. The first time I met Mary Ellen, she told me that if Mary Ellen's ruled the world, it would be a much better place. And I know in this case, for her, this is absolutely true. As we gather here today, and especially this gathering, I want to acknowledge with great respect the history, customs, and culture of the Coast Salish and Strait Salish peoples on whose traditional lands our university stands and where we meet today. From September 2012 to June 2013, the university has been celebrating its 50th anniversary, and this Congress marks the culmination of what has been a very busy and exciting anniversary year. We're celebrating the 50th anniversary of our university status, which took effect on July 1, 1963. This anniversary year has provided us with many opportunities to open our doors, and perhaps more importantly, to open our minds to the community that has supported us so extremely well over all of those 50 years. We're pleased to be partners with you this week in hosting Congress delegates from across this vast country and beyond. The theme of Congress this year is At the Edge, which not only reflects UVic's location on the west coast of Canada, but is also about testing the boundaries of disciplines, promoting innovative thinking, seeking relevance to both local and global communities, and committing to engaged scholarship and knowledge mobilization. Our theme focuses on the key social challenges of inequality, the need for inclusivity, and the acceptance of diversity to ensure voices on the margins are heard. In this province, our guest speaker today takes that responsibility to ensure that voices on the margins are heard seriously every day and in every way possible. It gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Nina Chappell, who will introduce our guest speaker for today.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. Welcome to everyone to this part of the Big Thinker series, of which the Royal Society of Canada is a co-sponsor. It is my pleasure, as President of the Academy of Social Sciences of the Royal Society, to introduce our guest speaker. I am especially pleased to be introducing Mary Ellen Turpel Lafond, who will be speaking on listening to the marginalized to address inequality, a topic of such importance and a wonderful prelude to the Royal Society's annual National Symposium this year in Banff, Thursday, November 14th, please write that down, on social justice in the 21st century, a new intergenerational contract. Mary Ellen Turpel Lafond was appointed BC's first representative for children and youth in November of 2006. The representative is an independent officer of the legislature. She is the elected president of the Canadian Council for Provincial Child and Youth Advocates, an alliance of provincial children's advocates from across the country who champion the voice and rights of children in their respective provinces and territories. In November of 2010, Ms. Turpel Lafond was awarded the Perry Shawana Award for the leadership she has provided and her work as a champion for the voices and rights of children, as well as her advocacy on their behalf and her outstanding commitment to their well-being. Also in November of 2010, the Vancouver Sun recognized her as one of BC's top 100 most influential women. She received honorary doctorate degrees from Ontario's Brock University in the same year. That's quite a year, 2010, for you. And from BC's Thompson Rivers University a year earlier. Mary Ellen was a tenured law professor at Dalhousie University's Faculty of Law. She is taught at the University of Toronto, University of Notre Dame, among other universities. She has been a visiting professor at the University of British Columbia and University of Victoria Law Schools. She holds a doctorate of law from Harvard Law School, a master's degree in international law from Cambridge University, a law degree from Osgoode Hall, a Bachelor of Arts degree from Carleton University. She also holds a certificate in the International and Comparative Law of Human Rights from the University of Strasbourg in France. When I met Mary Ellen briefly a few minutes ago, I said, you know, your office sure holds on to your information tightly. They would give me only the official line on this outstanding individual. She said to me, oh, well, what do you want? I said, I want to know something different about you. Well, she tells me that she's the skipper of her own tugboat. So, would you please give a warm welcome to this skipper?
Thank you very much. Well, thank you for that kind introduction, and welcome everyone. I too would like to recognize the Coast Salish people on whose territory we gather and thank them for sharing their land so generously to have this fantastic university and have an opportunity to gather in these congresses. And of course, wish them very well that someday they will get a rightful and just settlement for their treaty interests in this territory. I think that's something we should all work toward together for them and for their children. I'm so delighted to have a chance to talk about ideas, and the introduction was very lovely. My job these days is I'm the representative for Children and Youth, which is an independent officer of the Legislative Assembly of British Columbia. So I'm an advocate for children and youth in that capacity through my office of some 40 people throughout the province. We're a small, energetic outfit. We've had more than 10,000 advocacy cases for children and youth. The good news is in most of those, we are able to actually accomplish something of value to make sure children and youth are heard. And many of those young people, children and youth, are very marginalized, and they are on a pathway which is not going to end necessarily in a chair in this theater. It's going to end in a very different place. They have deep intersecting vulnerabilities in their life, vulnerabilities that myself one point shared, and maybe some of you at one point shared in your own life story. And as a result, it really motivates me to think about how can we get behind children and youth? How can we listen to them? How can we understand the pathways of marginalization? And quite apart from it as an academic problem, as a research question, as a broader societal question, although those are very important, how can we engage and relate and interact with children and youth in a meaningful way, child by child? That is so dynamic and important. And while we have, interesting, intersecting, again, rigorous disciplines of social work and law and the health sciences, how do we actually work with children? And how do we understand children in a way that honors the fact that they are independent humans with human rights, with life courses that are shaped in large part by the adults who interact with them? And really great children are produced because there's really great adults. That's the first lesson, I think, in life. And a really great adult is someone who will give time to a child, who will listen to a child, who will put a child first, who has enough foresight to see into the future through the stages of life of what a child may need to succeed. And of course, in your bailiwick of education, few things are more important in the life of a child than the education they receive from their family, the education in terms of unconditional love and support, but also the ability of adults in our society in Canada to organize an education system that demonstrates successively, generation through generation, our fundamental belief in the love and furtherance of children. That it has to be a good education system, a strong education system, not an adequate education system, not an okay, 15% of the kids are going to be left behind education system. It has to be a great education system. And it's not just the purview of teachers. Teachers are vitally important in it. It's not just the purview of administrators or parent advisory councils. It's a societal expression of our love and caring for children, having a strong education system that nurtures and values children. And what I see successively with the children that are marginalized in particular, whether they be Aboriginal children, and whether they be in the urban center, attending the provincial schools, where they continue day in and day out not to succeed with their peers, or whether they be on a reserve, where we have crappy teachers, we have crappy schools, we have very poor quality supports for those kids. They might be nice buildings, but there's no science teachers. They might be lovely locations, but there's no natural science program. We may have these different realities for children that are by virtue of the circumstance of birth. The child born into the Aboriginal family, the child born into the family that is experiencing deep, even transient poverty, has a starting point so far behind another child in this country, in Canada. We are such a wealthy country, we talk about that. And one of the things that staggers me continually in my work, as I've been a law professor, I've been a judge, I've been a lawyer. In fact, there's a person here today, John Nilsson. Where are you, John? John Nilsson, he was a person in Saskatchewan, gave me a QC as a lawyer, which gave me a lot of status, even though I myself was a very marginalized voice in the legal profession. And not only that, he turned around and made me a judge. And I thank you for that, and there'll be a station outside where they can whip you for what you've caused as a result. But in any event, people take a chance on someone. That wasn't as an adult. People help form you in your thinking and your ideas. Of course you have to form yourself. You have to be open-minded, you have to be creative, you have to be dynamic, you have to think, you have to want to learn. You can't be closed in your thinking. But people take a chance and they help develop you and form you. Two other people that are here today, I have a deep sense of gratitude toward Dr. Marie Batiste and Dr. Saugage Henderson that are here. They're now positioned at the University of Saskatchewan, but they are national and international scholars and tribal elders with deep wisdom and have come into the academy, and they have opened up the academy to Indigenous knowledge. They have done that, and they're young. I look at them, in fact, they're reverse aging. They look fantastic. Whatever they've got, I want. They look great, and of course, Saugage wanted me to kiss his ring today, so I was worried about that. First, they make a Jesuit the Pope. Now they think they're going to have a Chickasaw as a Pope. What's going to happen next? Seriously, Saugage. But these are people who, even for me in my life course, I was down at Harvard, studying at Harvard, and I was a kid, because I'm only like 25 now, right? I was a kid, I was at Harvard, I was there, and Saugage, who's from Harvard, somehow he heard about me through the tribal network. Marie's brother was running the Boston Indian Center. Saugage heard about me, made it his purpose to connect with me and say, what are you going to do, Mary Ellen? What do you think about the world? Let's have some deep tribal discussions about what do we do about these problems, these multiple problems we face. Will we become educated, knowledgeable people with a strong voice that will go forward and work, or will we just break down and give up? It was that stark.
You know, and that's what our tribal elders do for us. That's what universities do for people as well. So I'm very grateful to have had the support of people like Sage Jamri and others in this room, because what they demonstrate is something that I feel so profoundly about, which is you have to get behind people who may be marginalized. I wasn't marginalized. I went to Harvard. You know, in fact, I remember joining, we had this Indian Law Association at Harvard, and we get together and we talk about all of our problems, how law school was oppressive and everything else. I used to say, God, I could be a miner in Thompson, Manitoba, okay? This is not an oppressive environment. This is a fantastic environment. Let's get the best education. I'm going to the Widener Library, and if I can read every book I can, I will, because this is a fantastic environment for us to learn in. Let's not be beaten down by this. Let's open our minds and hearts to education, and let's take that energy and take it forward to do something good for our communities and our children and our families. And along that pathway, not only for Aboriginal families, but for many families, are so many young people that didn't get that support, that didn't get that turn. And I can say in my role now as representative for children and youth, I had a young person not too long ago who was virtually living on the street, like sleeping under a bridge, literally sleeping under a bridge. Young woman in foster care, very gifted, gone through many, many foster homes, terrible sexual abuse, physical abuse situation, and she should go to university. She's brilliant. She has to go to university. She's so capable. But of course, how? How will it ever happen? Because a government has a program that you're going to file 55 pages of paperwork to get to? Or because the school counselor is too busy to see someone? Or because she herself is overwhelmed with the daily details of how am I going to exist without my dog? I can't go to a homeless shelter because my dog can't come. I mean, the dimensions of what people encounter are just so overwhelming to them. Yeah, it was easy to step back with her and say, listen, we're getting you to go. We're going to university. This is going to happen. Sure enough, and God bless them. You know, it's not really in my official job description, but I called up a company that's a kind of a big name company in British Columbia. I won't name them. They've already taken credit for it. And I said, I've got a young woman. She needs to go to university. She's flat busted broke. Okay, she's a risk to you. She really doesn't have any family, but she's a good gamble. Fund her to go to university. I will help her get in, and we're going to send her and see how she makes out. They opened the pocketbook. They said, we'll do it. We will send her. We will make it happen. And through that process, that's not the first case. These things make me very personally happy, by the way. I can't really put them in my annual report because part of it is me shaking people down for things that they probably don't really want to give up. Two really good skills I learned from surviving difficult childhood is that you can function on your reptilian brain in a highly aggressive gunfight, and you can go to the death, and you don't really care. That's one thing. It's not the best thing. It's not good for your stress, but you can fight. If politicians want to fight, I will fight. If you want to fight over a $50 program for a kid because all your money is going to be invested in something else, I'll fight with you. And we will have that debate about why this is the best investment, and we will get ugly if we have to get ugly. The reptilian part of the brain functions very well for people who come from a hardscrabble background. The other part is, if you do not get up and speak, not say for someone, but give them a voice to speak for themselves, if you do not get behind that voice and that confidence, you will be silenced in your own life experience. And I'm sure for many of you here, there was some moment in your own academic career where you decided, I'm going to put my hand up and speak. I won't be silenced. I may feel like a fraud. I may feel like I'm really not that well educated, or I don't fit in. Can you believe I'm the head of the department now? Whatever. But at some point, the switch flipped, right? And that's a good feeling. It doesn't happen for everyone. You have to get behind people to make that happen. So that spirit of how do we get behind people? How do you do it? Is it an academic discipline? It's an attitude. It's an approach. But a lot of academic disciplines produce people that lose the ability to get behind people. You talk yourself out of doing something because the problems are so structural. They're so complex. Or we become so obsessed with our positions, our positioning about issues, Like today in Canada, we're debating an issue. I hope you ask me questions. I don't have all the answers, but I'd be happy to be in the debate for First Nations education. Should we have a federal First Nations Act for education or not? And I have a button on today. I have my Idle No More button on. I'm a proud member of Idle No More. Idle No More is a great movement. It's a fantastic, fantastic movement. And I say this myself as the spouse of someone who was a chief. When my husband was a chief, I used to say to him constantly, Saugh Marie will attest to this, if you are not doing something for children, okay, you are not, don't even bother coming home. If you want a piece of this, you better do something fun for kids. A little blunt. And he chose wisely. He created this White Buffalo Youth Lodge in Saskatoon. And we worked for kids. And as he got older, he's older than me, he now sees, having been a politician, a tribal chief, and whatever, he says, this is all we should be doing. This is all we should really be working on is this. But there's a debate. Let's just take this debate apart for a minute about who do we get behind? How do we help people who are marginalized? Okay, when you help people who are marginalized, you help yourself. Okay, because living in a society of profound division is not a happy place. There's no social cohesion. I love Idle No More. Why? Because it's the product of women like me. Aboriginal women, maybe, came through abuse, what have you, broken families, challenges. They got educated. People are like, oh my God, Idle No More, it's so terrifying. What are women, educated women, trying to raise their family without any supportive and sympathetic family policy? What threat are they really to this country? And if you go to Idle No More, to the protests, you will see that it's as much a cultural celebration as a political event. And in fact, when the chiefs get up to talk, most people walk away and say, God, we're tired of you guys. We are so tired of hearing from you guys. Did you raise your families? Have you been a good parent? And we are harsh critics. Because for First Nations people, there's no family policy. There's no maintenance enforcement office. Those women don't get child support. There's no matrimonial property protection. It's the Wild West. There's a horrible history of intergenerational physical and sexual abuse. And if we suggest that somehow in the Aboriginal community, we just need to give Aboriginal people back their power and everything will be solved, no, that's not the case. You need a partnership to build a good community. You need to get in behind and understand, how do you disrupt intergenerational sexual abuse? It still happens. I investigate and deal with cases. I'm dealing with the case of a suicide of a 14-year-old girl right now who was sexually abused and sexually assaulted. And it's in her community, and even her own chief says, help me. I don't know what to do. Half of the kids in our community have FASD. Sexual abuse. We can't pretend we can solve this on our own. We can't pretend, Mary Ellen. We want to work together on it, but we have to know how to work together. And I said, well, smart people know one thing, which is the answers are not simple. They're complex. But the most important answer, and it's not an emotional issue, it's an attitude, it's a position. It's like postmodernism, okay? It's like post-colonialism. I don't care what you want to call it. It's about getting behind children and youth who are marginalized, because they are, and talking to them. And what does it take to say, what's happening? What's going on? Listening. You're being sexually abused? Somebody should listen when you're sexually abused. They shouldn't pretend it doesn't happen. I recently had a big conference on communities. How do we build community organizations with the Red Cross and others? And I had a lot of people from Hockey Canada. I had Sheldon Kennedy come and speak about the sexual abuse he experienced from Graham James, which is fantastic. Sheldon has been an incredible advocate for victims of sex abuse. There's child advocacy centers named after him, whatever. In part because he appeals to the boys, right? Because he's a hockey guy. He's a farm boy who was brutally sexually abused by the hockey coach that was supposed to help him. If only we could have that for one of the First Nations kids that, goes through this. Like, where's their poster child? And when we had this fantastic conference about sex abuse, a lot of the First Nations women came to me and said, Mary Ellen, when will we have the conference about what's going on with our children? And when will we have that reckoning that we can actually bring these issues forward and address them? And I said, well, I think, I don't know, but can you, let's keep going. Let's get behind kids one at a time and do what we have to do to break the cycle, to support, to promote resilience, to listen, to create new dreams, to create new opportunities for young people that are so deeply marginalized. And it's not just Aboriginal children and youth, is it? I deal extensively with immigrant and refugee children and youth who feel deep dislocation, and children and youth in poverty. But it's an attitude of how do we do it? So back to this question, First Nations education as an example. We've got this crappy First Nations education system. We have this Indian Act that's been around since the colonial period. First Nations education is actually under the Indian Act. It's a provincial system. They enter a contract, you apply the provincial system. It's basically a colonial system. What do you do? How do you get out of it? Everybody has an idea. Well, we can't possibly, one of the ideas, a rigid idea in the political movement, which I challenge, is we can't have federal legislation on First Nations education because it would be offensive, because we need First Nations control. Well, if you don't have federal legislation, how do you have a spending power? Okay, you got to figure it out. We have to have a spending power. You have to have a financial basis. You have to have a governance structure. Legislation is legislation. You can co-create it. Why can't you co-create legislation? Heavens, maybe that's the path forward. How do you co-create it? Well, you sit down and work it out together, because good people, this isn't a partisan issue. When we talk about things like First Nations children, people always say, well, if only we had this government or that government, you could work more effectively, Mary Ellen, or if we had this or that. I just don't agree with that. I think we need to work with everyone. And people are saying, well, if only Stephen Harper wasn't such a rotten guy and so. I don't have an opinion about whether Stephen Harper will be in the pearly gates before me or not. But I have an opinion, which is this: if I have 5 minutes with Stephen Harper, I'm going to say, Stephen Harper, you know what? Please make this a priority. I believe you can make this a priority, as should any person in Canada of any political stripe, because ensuring our furtherance and survival, as communities and societies by having good supports for children is not a partisan agenda. Maybe some are more open-minded to it, maybe some are not. But if anything, when you go and talk to the kid in the community that is really struggling, they don't ask for your political credentials. They don't say, oh, by the way, are you from the Conservative Party of Canada? Are you with the New Democrats? They don't care. Sometimes they'll even say to me, some political people exploit kids extensively too, right? They're on their campaigns. We want to help the children, so give us all the money and we'll take care of them. Well, that's bullshit. Nobody who wants power over children will take care of children. The people who will take care of children are people who will actually listen and work with children. So on First Nations education, we probably do need legislation. But what we need even more than legislation is we need a process of engaging young people. We need a national civil engagement project where young people, without the influence of manipulative political parties, adults that would like the money to administer the systems, can actually bring them forward and say, what would you like? What would meet your needs? What would you like to do? And guess what? Eventually they say, I want to be, an airplane pilot. I want to work here. I want to be a trapper. Why can't we do that? Why can't we actually talk to young people about what they want and listen to them? Not like, I've heard from you, thank you very much, now please go home. Or we've had a consultation where we've had 50 kids come in, we've heard from them, now go away, now we'll talk to the 7,000 adults and produce the thing. We can do things differently. It does work. Young people have a voice. They have a right. We can look at it from a human rights paradigm. The right to an education means, the right to a teacher that respects me, the right to a school that will support me, a family that will help me through. And I'm not saying don't work with families, don't work with communities. I agree with that. But you know what? Sometimes the families are beaten down, burnt out. Sometimes the communities are so bereft of hope that you have to start the spark somewhere. You have to. And if any of you here that's a parent, I'm a parent of 4 children, and I've parented a lot of other children in addition to my own. I've become the person I am because my children have taught me so much, quite apart from my big fat Harvard degree. I mean, I've learned a lot about life from my kids because we actually sit down and we learn to see the world differently. We learn what is perfect. You know, if you're a parent of a child with special needs, your idea of perfect is not necessarily the Harvard graduate. In fact, that might seem very imperfect. You begin to see the world differently if you up close see children. And I can remember when I practiced just for a short while in family law as a family lawyer. And I mean, to me, everything's family law. That's the first problem I always had when I went to law school was everything's about the family. Like, it's all family law. What are you talking about, family law? All it was like divorce. Like, what? You know, breastfed by the mother, bonding, like, that's family law, right? Like, that's family law of how we run things. It just found it astounding that we would have this category of horrible examples of relationships and call it family law. We just got a new family law in BC. I'm so proud to be part of it in some small way, you know, very small way, but an excited, enthusiastic small way of screaming and yelling at the Attorney General constantly to do it. And that was, we have a new family law in BC that there's no more custody of children. Legal custody of children is gone. Nobody owns children. They are not a piece of baggage to be passed from parent to parent. There's parenting responsibilities, and you share them. Nobody has custody anymore. There's parenting responsibilities. And there are children's rights and parenting responsibilities because nobody owns their children. But the responsibility part is great because we can then shift to, hey, you're responsible. Like, what's the fight, you two? Get over it. Family law, it's got to be about the children, right? It's got to be about, it's all family law. And when you look at it and you think about it from the perspective of the child, well, where's the child in family law? Do we ever listen to them? You know, like, and when I did that short time where I officially practiced family law, I can remember being locked in the room with the client thinking, oh my God, I've got to get out of here. This is unbelievable what these people are doing to each other. It's incredible how convoluted they have become because of whatever experience they've had, that they have lost sight of their children, completely lost sight of their children. And through that context of doing that, I was really able to step back and think, I actually can't help you. You know, I can't help you because our family law paradigm, I can take your money and I can fight this case for you for years. Me and my buddy Tony Merchant, we will make a lot of money off this. I will fight this for years, and you will be no further ahead, and your kids will be worse off. You know, because we actually have no way to listen. Could you please leave now, and could we bring the kids in where we can talk to them? And it's a different world, and we need to make it that different type of peaceful resolution, best interest of the child. And that's people who actually are paying someone to help them fight over their children, right? They are the caring people that really care about their kids, so they fight like crazy over them. What about the people that don't even have 2 nickels to rub together to be able to think about their children? And what are we doing there when we think about it? How do we position ourselves? How do we think about our disciplines in a different way, how we engage there? Well, there's a lot of work to be done. There is a lot of work. And yet we throw our hands up in shock. You know, shock. We recently went through a commission of inquiry in British Columbia into the Willie Picton murders. And they were mostly Aboriginal women, not all, Aboriginal women from all throughout Western Canada. We had a report, a big giant report with hundreds of recommendations. And I know the commissioner quite well, Commissioner Wally Opal. He's a former judge, the Superior Court of Appeal of British Columbia, now practicing lawyer, former Attorney General. Did the Picton inquiry, you know, and many of us, Aboriginal women and others, stepped back and thought, well, we're going to watch this through. It's going to be interesting to watch this. You know, they're going to be traumatized. And where will they come down in the end? Will they come down on the right place? And I'm sad to say they missed the boat, big time. I think it was a significant waste of effort and money because they did not understand the pathway to become a victim of Willie Picton, to, as an Aboriginal woman in Western Canada, to end up on the downtown east side. What is the pathway? It starts with abuse in childhood. It starts with sex abuse. It starts with no one being behind a person. and it falls away till you end up there. There's a pathway there. I'm not saying, Picton was waiting at the end of it, although he's a pretty successful serial murderer, and he's not the only one. But sometimes I meet with young girls who are being sexually abused. I'll be in the community, in a northern community, and I'll say, what do you want? What's going on? What do you want? Well, I want out. Take me to Vancouver. Just get me a bus ticket, get me a plane ticket. Can I go to Vancouver? Things will be better for me. No, they're not going to be better for you in Vancouver. It's not going to be fun. But going to Vancouver is better than being here. Young women would pick the downtown east side over where they are. And that's not just from British Columbia, because in that context, I meet children from all over Western Canada who end up coming here to be victims to the pathway of horrific abuse. Talk about discarded lives where people did not stand, not to mention not believe them, not believe they were abused. Nobody believed they were sexually abused when they were kids, when their uncle or whoever decided that they would be a victim. They're discarded. So can we have a different sensibility? Can we be different? Could we have broken through and been different? So what does it mean, this concept of reconciliation? How can you take these deep understandings we have about the pathways into poor outcomes as adults? We can talk about it from a corporate perspective, lost productivity, we don't have a skilled labor force, we have a lot of challenges with a globalized economy. How are we going to have people who will be able to meet the workforce needs of the future? That's a legitimate and important question. We can't really afford to just discard people, right? So just on a hardcore economic analysis, we can't just throw people away. But because we do throw people away, what kind of a society are we? What kind of an academy are we that throws people away, that has a school of social work, that produces people that can't talk to kids, or has a school of law that produces graduates that don't understand how to talk to kids, or a school of nursing or medicine, and I could go on and on and on, that doesn't know actually how to do something that's so basic? Is it because we've lost our connection with the wise people like the tribal elders? Maybe I was fortunate enough in my limited life experience to have some of those elders help me along the way to say, this really does count. This is the most important thing you can do. And this will help you. And I'm not saying my job's more important than anyone else. Heavens, no, it's not. But this is what turns me on, okay? And I like it. And just little me, okay? Little nobody, Mary Ellen, can actually have a little team of 40 people in this, British Columbia, where a couple people say, why don't we give this a shot? And I can have 10,000 cases. It's a team effort. If we actually harness that together, we don't have a national children's advocate in Canada. We don't have a national children's commissioner. We submitted to the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, the oldest convention, most ratified convention in the United Nations is the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. In my role as president of the Canada Council of Child and Youth Advocates, Canada submitted its report on its compliance with the convention. They were 10 years late, so they had 2 cycles of reporting that they missed, and so we submitted, and their report was crap. It was just crap. It said stuff that was completely wrong. It was terrible. First of all, I called all the people in foreign affairs. Hello, my name is Mary Ellen. I'd like to talk to you about your report. Just go away. Leave me alone. No, actually, I'd like to talk to you. No, we don't have anything to say to you. We're going to be submitting our own report because, we read your report on the advocates across Canada don't see, well, first of all, it's not even factually accurate. Was there a vetting process? Do we not even take it seriously enough that we just write a piece of fiction like Goodnight Moon? What is this? Maybe the next cycle we can sit down and talk. Well, I may not be around for the next cycle, so I'd like to talk about this cycle. And furthermore, I'm a menopausal mother of 4 and an officer of the Legislative Assembly, so answer my fucking phone call. But in any event, so we're going to do the full Monty. We're going to write a report that says Canada is not only not in compliance with this convention, but it actually has no plan at the national level for the most vulnerable children. Hence, We have this hillbilly discussion on should we have a First Nations Education Act? Well, yeah, that should have been done a long time ago. We should have a clear spending power. We should spend the money that we need to lift children by actually sparking in them their natural curiosity and ability to grow and learn and tell us about a different world. Of course we should spend the money. Of course the Crown Treasury should be bound to do that. Furthermore, we need to do about another 50 other things on top of that. And why aren't we doing it? We don't have a National Children's Commission. There's nobody to go to. It's kind of like in the healthcare system. You know, if they take out the wrong kidney, and then they say, well, go to our complaints department, but there's really no complaints department. And then you go to the appeal board, but there's really no appeal board. And then eventually they produce a ruling, but then you find out in 5 years they never did a single ruling. And then eventually you're dead, right? And then people just talk about, I had a terrible experience in the healthcare system, which has been designed to keep people so far away from actually talking to anybody that nothing ever happens. So then I think, well, is that what our public services will become like? Is it a public service? Is it private enterprise? What is it, this attitude I'm talking about? I'm less rigid as I get old. I'm not necessarily, I think good, important public services are essential. Education as a public service is an extremely valuable and important initiative from a societal perspective. But, you know, where's the corporate sector then? Okay, so nobody at Foreign Affairs will answer the phone. Well, you know, what about Howe Street? What about Bay Street? Does anybody want to answer the phone there and say, what are you doing? How are you investing? Oh, you know, we're the 5th largest company in British Columbia and we support 2 schools with a food program. Well, that's just not fucking good enough in my opinion. You know, that is not good enough. That is a disgrace. And, you know, there's a guy just 100 kilometers from here. His name's Bill Gates. Okay, he's been pretty successful. He's got a pretty awesome dad, by the way. Credit to his dad. They give everything that they can to kids to ameliorate, infectious diseases, to try and understand what the best education system is. That's all they do, the Gates Foundation. Going to the Gates Foundation is like, someone like me, it's like going to heaven. Really wonky, well-educated people that want to help and actually want to demonstrate that they are making a difference by showing the evidence that they do make a difference. You know, and they got a great partnership with the University of Washington. They have fantastic, I don't understand why they don't have any partnerships with us. And all kinds of Canadians work there. You know, the former head of CETA is there. All these great Canadians are like, why don't we have that in Canada? We push that away. How do we change that? So how do we make this mentality we are going to get behind kids? Really get behind them. You're educated, you're running a department, you're a professor. Yes, raise your own children well. But what about other children? Can you get behind other children? Can you think of a way to do that? Can you work together? Here's an idea, okay? Because I never believe you come to a meeting without giving someone an idea. I always say that to different people who always be meeting with politicians, say, you never leave without asking for something. You're not just there for fun, okay? It isn't a family reunion. Before you leave, you ask for something, hopefully something that's going to be a stretch goal, right? Here's an idea. Foster kids. This province, more than half of them are Aboriginal kids. Almost every province in Canada, Aboriginal children are overrepresented in foster care. Some provinces like Saskatchewan, where John Nielsen is from and sits in the Legislative Assembly, he knows well it's 80%. And all the non-Aboriginal children numbers go down and the Aboriginal children's numbers rise. Here's an idea. Free tuition for foster kids at every one of your universities. Go back to your Board of Governors and do it. I'll talk to your presidents. Tuition waiver for kids in care. Is it complicated? Of course it's not complicated. Are people going to go put their kids in care to get a free education? People always say, well, Mary Ellen, someone will put their kid. Yeah, I'm not going to put my kids in care to get a free education. Like, are you crazy? You know, seriously. Why don't we have that? Why wouldn't we have that basic, the kids are the children of the state. I mean, I work with the kids in foster care. By the time they age out of care, let's say they've been in care for 10 years, we're talking about 20 foster placements, group homes. I mean, the lives that these kids have been through is just unbelievable. that they have a spark of education. How many of them are going to use those free tuition? I don't know, probably less than 10% anyway. It's not going to really cost you that much. But if it cost us a lot, that would be great. What's 10% of them in your province? Oh, well, geez, I've done the math here. We'd be surprised if it's 600 people in British Columbia. We don't even have it in British Columbia. Oh, well, the Ministry of Advanced Education has to contemplate that, and we have to get a president. No, you don't. You can do that. So here's my big idea. Get behind kids. And in your colleges and universities, here's the first thing you can do. Free tuition for the kid in care. Work it out in your province. It's not complicated. If they tell you it's complicated, call my office. I will give you the dummy's guide to how to do it, because it can be done. Because the one thing I've learned, if you are a skilled person, an educated person, you can reach out to people and you can solve problems. It's not going to solve everything in the lives of these young people to have free tuition. They're going to need a lot of other supports. You're still going to have to get behind them in a myriad number of ways. But if I could go out to that 6-year-old kid, in northern BC on a reserve and say, you can go to UBC. You can go to Capilano College, and it's not going to cost you anything. In fact, here's 50 posters of people that went. And we're going to make a bargain. We all know about the Harlem Project in terms of education and how you make a deal with parents. Make a deal with the kids. But what can we give them? What do we bring them? A promise of a just society when they grow up and create it for us? Okay, that's nice. I think that's good. But I think you have to have something concrete. You're in the academic world. I've been in the academic world. It's intimidating. Fewer and fewer. We just had our OECD report on where does Canada stand. We dropped. Different levels we've dropped on things, right? Substance abuse, hey, we're almost like number 1, okay? The kids are smoking dope all the time, probably with their parents, because the parents are that daft that they'd smoke dope with their kids, which is really stupid and makes me crazy. We're really doing well in dope smoking. We actually aren't doing too bad in PISA. For those kids that are still there and taking the tests, we're not doing too bad. Of course, the marginalized kids are left behind. We're not doing too bad in PISA in terms of our education achievement. But guess what we dropped dramatically in? Post-secondary attendance. They're not going on to attend post-secondary, particularly from families that might be vulnerable and marginalized. Why? They're overwhelmed with the cost. They're overwhelmed with the concept. They can't understand. They can't see themselves in it. And the more we become the globalized university family, attracting, this worldwide international, it's all fine, but we're forgetting them. So a small project, I'll end it with this, a small challenge I have to you. Tuition waivers. Go with the heads of your department. If you are the head of the department, well, sign the letter. Go to the Board of Governors, go to the President, go to the Minister of Education, go to the Premier, go to the Prime Minister if you have to, I don't care. You could have an act to do it, could be done. It could be done. And I say, why not? You have to find ways to get behind people. It would be a great message, but it also would be a great message if not only you did it, but then you hunted down a few people and you opened your office up and your hearts up to say, who have you got? Because not everybody is going to be proactive like, Saw-Gage Henderson kind of was with me and come find me and say, what are you doing? What are you going to do? And Saw-Gage, not only did he come and find someone like myself, very marginalized really, but said things like, I think you need to work on this. He actually told me the stuff I was supposed to work on. He gave me clients where I'd be working for them for 300 years. They had so many problems, and he's still working for them. But I think that's the dimension of looking for people, listening, going to where children and youth are, not judging. Put the judgment away. Go to where they are. Education is a path. Reconciliation in education means you make the path. Have good classrooms, do good research, publish good papers, have good conferences. All of that's wonderful. We're all having a good time here, right? It's strawberries and champagne all around. It's fantastic. This is Victoria. It's a beautiful place. Well, for God's sakes, free tuition for kids in care. Next year when you have this meeting, I hope we can have a rush to the top and we'll say 5 universities did it first. Okay, who's going to be the winner? You guys are competitive. Who's going to be the winner? Good luck with that. Thank you.